Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Jay, your favorite host, as always, and let me tell you what I've been reading. So, what's the idea behind this? Well, I'm sure you guys have noticed, but the YouTube channel that we used to use for our episodes has been pretty barren ever since we hopped over to Podbean. And, granted, Podbean's been better for us overall, but, we have this channel, we've always kind of wanted to do something. So we had been discussing and figured, hey, well, we got time, we got this channel that we don't use, we might as well, do a little side content here, separate from the show itself, separate, or do our own things. And, here I am, I'm just trying to spitball ideas, thinking of stuff that I can do, well, what would I be interested in doing videos about? I mean, full-on, reviews of other shows, episode by episode, didn't work out. Yeah, hey, who remembers the Q Ranger views? Because I sure as fuck didn't. So, thinking of something simple that I can do, and one of the ideas came up was talk about comic books. It's simple, I do like comics, but it's, And initially I had dismissed the idea of doing a comic review type of show because, it's super low effort, any old hack fraud on the internet can sit down and talk about shitty comics for 20 minutes or so. Then I thought about it more, and I'm like, hey, wait a second. I'm a hack fraud. I can do a comic review show, so, that's how I decided I was going to do it. Now, at the moment, I'm still kind of working out the idea of what I want to do for the format. Primarily, the idea I was going to have is review books that I'm reading actively, kind of weekly to weekly or monthly to monthly, I guess. And then from here and there, do older issues, just kind of stuff I pick at random. Now, granted, right now, I'm not actively reading a whole lot of weekly stuff. It's been a little while since I started getting into weekly books, and, I used to read them more actively a lot when I was younger, but you know how it is, time and money and the overall decline of the industry, there's a long period of time where, I couldn't afford to really read anything, and both in terms of personal time and just monetarily, and, what was out there wasn't worth the time or the effort to seek out, too, so, and, which is not to completely dismiss the entire industry at that point. There was some good stuff, but I primarily stuck to a lot of older stuff. I wasn't really reading a whole lot of new stuff. Plus, this was 10, 11 something years ago before. So, this was before they had a lot of, digital reading, comic apps, readers, stuff like that, and, I was a dumb kid who didn't realize you could just pirate scans off the internet. I was 10, whatever. Plus, I've always been pretty negative against the idea of digital-only copies of books and movies and stuff like that, so the idea of even using those has never really appealed to me, and you're missing something if you don't really have the book right there in your hand. That's primarily why. But, now that I have a stable income, I've started getting back into some more stuff, but it's really the main problem is finding stuff to read that would be interesting to talk about. So, here's something that I kind of picked up randomly. I figured, I'm probably not going to like it, but it's something worth talking about, so we'll start with the simple one. And, of course, by simple, I mean Batman. Yeah, here I am, taking a look at these two books, and I'm asking myself, what exactly, again, compelled me to read this arc? I'm not really that sure. Based on the plot synopsis, the concept seemed pretty interesting, but it's not super original. I'm pretty sure it's been done before. At the very least, it's something similar to what's been done before, not exactly with these characters. I thought the artwork was pretty good, but overall it doesn't really stand out. It's just good, not great. Jimenez does a pretty good job depicting the overall kind of griminess of Gotham. I think his environmental design is very good, but his character design is a little hit or miss. And then in terms of the writing, Tinian's alright. I'm not super familiar with his writing. I think I've read a couple of his things here and there, but I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a fan. I think he's just fine. I certainly think he's a better writer than Tom King was, but a wet dish towel is a better writer than Tom King was. I'm a better writer than Tom King was. Really, though, I think why I'm second-guessing after I've written this and I've read the two issues and I'm formulating my thoughts is that the main reason why, and I think I'm going to get a little bit of flack for saying something like this, but I don't know, it's that I don't care about Batman. I just don't care about him at all. I really don't. I don't hate Batman. Batman. He thinks he's got some of the more recognizable comic book villains. He's fine as a character, but it's just he's just kind of dull. He's not really that interesting anymore. It's the big problem with why I think he's so dull is just it's fucking everything's been done, man. Like what fucking hasn't been done with Batman? That's really the problem, is that like every possible conceivable idea in which you can put Batman and one of his villains into has either been done with somebody else or with Batman already. And what you can't come up with is either not very good, or it's not something that the current kind of crop of writers that are out there could really pull off. Somebody might be able to pull it off, but I don't think so. And I think a big reason why, too, as well, it's how heavily promoted and just overall pushed he is nowadays. Basically, that's the point, is that Batman has way, way, way more exposure than anybody else, and all of them are either retreads of old things or just not very good at all. And that's fine. I mean, he has good stories. There are Batman stories I like, but it's just everything's been done. And there's no interesting spins you can really put on Bruce Wayne or Batman or whoever anymore. And that's really it. So at the moment that I'm recording all this, there's only 2 issues out. More probably are going to come out by the time I finish. I know that they're on a bi-weekly release schedule right now, but I'm really only going to do these once a month, so when it comes to the reviews, I'm really going to do 2 issues at a time with this. And when it comes to the actual review part, I'm going to mostly stick to relatively quick recaps. Really, I've never really liked the whole idea of doing like panel-to-panel, page-to-page, word-balloon-to-word balloon recaps for your review. I mean, that defeats the purpose of the review to just completely tell you everything that happens in it. So when I do decide to do a recap, I might just not do recaps for certain issues, and when I do, it's going to be relatively brief, maybe about a paragraph's worth of information, maybe a little bit longer depending on how long the issue is or how much content there is to talk about. But otherwise, that's basically how it's going to be. So, if you decided to pick it up here like I did, here's a short recap of what's been happening so far. I went back a couple of issues to try to figure out exactly what's going on. The issue itself doesn't really explain, so basically, as far as I could figure out, there was some elaborate scheme involving this villain called the Designer, where he was gathering up Catwoman, Riddler, Penguin, and the Joker for some super ultimate scheme where he was trying to take control of Gotham or something or other. I'm not entirely clear. And the Joker double-crosses him, and basically, so instead of everybody winning, it's just the Joker who won. Part of the plan involved hacking into Batman's bank accounts, basically stealing all of his money and taking control of Wayne Tech. So, essentially, Joker now has infinite money and all of Batman's resources. So now Batman has to make do without his superpower of infinite money. As well, he's pretty much alone right now. Robin's off, I'm not entirely sure, I couldn't really figure that out. Nightwing, I think, got brainwashed in some side stories from what I'm hearing. I'm not entirely clear. Jason Todd's been off doing Jason Todd things. Batgirl got crippled again. And Alfred's dead. If you haven't been reading, Alfred is dead now, by the way. So Batman's kind of fucked. So, first issue 95, mostly establishes just the status quo of the current story arc. It opens up with a little bit of a flashback to like the first kind of meeting of Batman and the Joker. It's really kind of irrelevant. So yeah, the first couple of pages kind of just establishing basically how overnight the entire city of Gotham is basically just turned into a war zone. It's Joker's goons are just running around, blowing shit up, Batman's being chased around like mad, being shot at, everything's exploding. Joker's essentially taking control of the media, the police, basically everything with his money because he's super duper ultra ridiculously rich now. So and then the main crux of the issue is Batman trying to get to Wayne Tech's main offices, because apparently he's got a fucking mini Batcave there. He's got like a billion fucking mini Batcaves hidden around the city or something or other. So he's gonna try to find one of those and just kind of lay low and scheme for a little while. So meanwhile, there's this little subplot going on where we have the Joker going off and buying the Monarch Theater, which is where Batman's parents were killed, and renovating it. Which, one, it's already been done. I'm pretty sure it's happened like 2 or 3 times now. I don't exactly remember. I know it's happened at least once. And it's not even like an interesting idea. It's like, Like, what's the fucking point? Like, oh, you're gonna fuck with Batman by rebuilding a movie theater? Alright, like, there's better ideas here, Joker. You sure? You sure this is what you want to do? Like, I get it. There's the irony there. I guess I'm not entirely clear when the Joker found out Batman was Bruce Wayne. I think this happened a while ago, back when like the whole rebirth thing first started again. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I'm not super really well versed in the Batman series, so I don't really remember when this happened. But I know that he already knew who Batman was before this all happened. But it's cheesy, and it's not even like the fun kind of cheesy like I like from Batman. It's just dumb. And honestly, having read the next issue already, nothing really interesting comes from it. It's kind of a waste of time, and it's really just a waste. So Batman gets to the little mini cave, and he's trying to break into it. Unfortunately for Batman, Joker already knew that it was going to be there, and he had his newest minion waiting there for him. Punchline. Yeah. This is a character who needs to exist. So, for those of you who haven't been following along, one of the brand new status quo changes is this character, Punchline, who is the Joker's new girlfriend. She calls herself Punchline because clown. And boy oh boy, absolutely pointless character. Now, I'm gonna be a little fair. They've only been around a small handful of issues. I think about like 3 or 4 issues prior to this was their first appearance. But she's done absolutely fuck all so far. The worst part is like there's nothing interesting about her new. She's literally just Harley again. A weirdo Joker fangirl who became obsessed with him is now working for him. The problem is that so far she's kind of missing that hook that Harley had early on. I mean, you know, she was a normal person who got mind-fucked by the Joker, essentially, and fell for it, like, Stockholm Syndrome. She's just like an edgy fangirl who joined the Joker because it was cool. That's pretty much it. Apparently there's some, like, one-shot she's getting a little bit soon that's gonna really explain it, but I don't think it's gonna be anything more interesting than that. And it's a shame, too, because you can really tell that, I don't know if it was Tinian who created the character or it was just somebody else, but somebody really, really wants people to like this character because they are really trying to shill her hard so far. And it's because not only in her first appearance, she solos Harley in her first debut fight, and I'm not really a big Harley fan, so I couldn't really care less about that in one way or the other. But I mean, having your extra special OC make a long-running and well-established character job out to them in their first fight, an interesting character does not make. Then you have Batman, the king of bullshit fan-wake victories, jobbing out to her as well. Granted, during the fight, Batman's been heavily drugged, and I think he's been, sleep-deprived for, a month. But ultimately, the problem is that doesn't make your character interesting, and I don't care about her. I'd be more mad, but you can really tell they're a character that's not going to last very much longer after this story arc. So, yeah, the fight's kind of boring. It's mostly one-sided. And as the issue ends, we see a glimpse of a new Batsuit. And then the Joker crashes the bat plane into the little cave and blows everybody up. This new costume for him is kind of interesting because the issue implies that it straight up states that Batman had no idea about the suit. He had never even seen it or heard of it before. Nobody knew about the fucking suit. Apparently Alfred built it. That seems to be the idea that they're kind of implying with it. So I'm gonna talk about the suit for a little bit, not entirely for positive reasons. So they first kind of showed it off a little bit before the issue dropped. They kind of spoiled the full design with alternate cover for a later issue. Well, it's certainly an interesting idea for the Batsuit. But, interesting doesn't mean good. I've seen quite a lot of discussion about it since it shown up, and I've seen a lot of different opinions over it. And the overall consensus, it's pretty negative. Honestly, I think my favorite comment that I saw is that somebody called it a New Game Plus looking ass suit, which, it makes sense. It's weird. It's this, really overly armored looking suit, and we've seen that done before with Batman before. Of course, there's obviously the Dark Knight movies. There was Arkham did it with the later games, and it's not too bad. I think there's just a lot of like niggling bits about it that are just weird. There's these weird patches of gray all over the place. The belt is just this ugly solid gray. Admittedly, it shows up in the next issue, and the belt's a different color, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. But there's like these weird gray exposed patches just like in random points. It's not even like a consistent kind of way to it. It's just, oh, here's some space that we had to fill. The gauntlets have this weird segmenting to it, and it's not even, again, it's not even like a coherent design to it. It's, oh, there's lines to it because we need to have lines to it. The colors, too. The colors are really weird, too. It's like, the base suit itself, like the undersuit, is this weird blue, black, gray kind of mixture to it. It's really kind of gross looking. It doesn't really work with the blue. The blue itself on its own just doesn't work because it's just this super duper bright blue. It's like, it's more like a cyan than a blue than anything. And it doesn't help in that there's this, again, there's the weird like gray bits mixed in that kind of just ruin the whole color scheme to it as well. I think the biggest problem is that the color blue they chose is just way too bright for Batman just in general. I mean, for fuck's sakes, even Adam West's Batman would tell him to tone it down. Jesus Christ. The light blue would have been fine if it was like an accent color, but as the main part of the suit, it doesn't work. Granted, again, I mentioned we see it a little bit in the beginning of the next issue, and it looks a little bit better. I think the problem is that, for whatever reason, the promo art they used, it looks like Batman is standing on the fucking sun, because it's so bright and shiny, and it just kind of makes it look worse overall. Again, a couple of bits would be fine, but the entire thing, it's just like glowing like a spotlight. Especially with the blue bat symbol on the chest. I think having it like be a brighter blue than normal for Batman is fine, but it's way too much. There's a couple things I do like, though. I like the eyes. Instead of like the classic blank white eyes, they're glowing yellow eyes. It's a little weird, but I think it's neat. That's something that they don't really do with Batman, is they don't really change up the eyes a whole lot. Either it's just, you can see Batman's eyes, or it's the solid white. I think really, other than like a couple like variant costumes, the only one who really did that was Flashpoint Batman. And I liked Flashpoint Batman's design, even though it's kind of edgy, obviously. But I mean, I like edgy shit like that. I kind of get it with the idea behind the suit. They kind of seem to be they're setting up this whole arc where Bruce Wayne's trying to make Gotham this bright, shining place that doesn't really need a Batman. It's a nice, happy place, and it's a nice, happy Batman suit for a nice, happy Gotham. I get it. It's fine for like a thematic thing. It reminds me a lot of those back in like the 90s or like the early 2000s where you'd go to the toy store and they'd have Batman in this ultra super duper specific armor, and he'd have all these stupid gadgets and all shit like this, and it's like some awful like neon color to it. It's kind of like one of those almost. It's not as egregious. Obviously, it's not done to sell toys. Although, that being said, they're probably making toys for it right now as we speak. But it's, again, thematically, I get it. But overall, it's just not a good design. It'd be fine as like a one-off thing. You have these heroes have all these ridiculous one-off costumes. Fucking Spider-Man has costumes worse than this, and he's used them for like half an issue before. So I'm fine with the idea of it, but it's not something that can work for more than like an issue or two. So, issue 95 itself, relatively alright. It's a fine kind of introduction to the storyline. As I mentioned, the flashback part was kind of irrelevant. You kind of could have used that to kind of fill out a little bit more space. Again, maybe put a recap in for whoever was going to join in, because obviously, again, they've been shilling this arc really, really hard. It's got a million tie-ins to it and all this stuff. They're really kind of building it up. So, I think like a recap of what's going on, kind of like maybe like 1 page worth of how we got here kind of thing, would have been appreciated. Maybe a little bit more of just seeing how Joker's fucking over Gotham, villain shenanigans, what are the other characters doing. From what I saw in the previous issue, all the villains are just kind of hanging out in some safe house that Penguin had. Okay, sure, fine, whatever. So that's fine. Obviously, there's the omnipresent question of where the fuck is the Justice League? Why isn't somebody helping? So maybe a little bit more of just like how exactly the Joker is fucking over Gotham, other than like one or two scenes. Oh, he's controlling the media. Oh, his goons are running rampant. We get a little bit of that in the next issue, so that's fine. But here, it's just kind of wasted space, I guess. Again, definitely recommended to at least find like a plot synopsis of the previous arc before you read this if you aren't already reading. But overall, it's not a bad way to set up the arc. It's fine. There's missing information that I think you should have put in there, especially again with how heavy they're kind of advertising the story. So, opening up the next issue, we get a weird flash forward dream sequence with Batman in his new fancy suit in this fancy future Gotham, like I was explaining. There's this little bit where he's fighting Mr. Freeze and his kids, quote unquote. He calls them Snow Cone and Ice Pop. You know what? That's the kind of goofy shit that I like about Batman. That's the kind of stuff that I like. Then the dream goes really quick because we see Alfred show up, and then there's this honestly really creepy shot where we see Alfred with the broken neck and his fucking head's hanging down by his chest, and it's so fucked up. It's weird. And then Batman wakes up. He finds himself in a filthy crack house with Harley Quinn because of course she is. Somehow she survived getting her fucking throat cut open and being left in a fucking sewer, but you know what? Whatever, it's fine. So Harley says Batman's been knocked out for about 3 days. Shit's got even more fucked. Essentially, it's turned into open war at nighttime. Basically, nobody gives a shit anymore. It has become a whole night. And we get a one-page appearance of another new character that we've been introduced to in this arc. Somebody calling themselves the Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is kind of interesting because while his design is... Well, he looks like some crazy kid that made a shitty costume from some bits he found in the junkyard, so, that design works for the character that they're kind of setting up. I do really like his little weapon, which is just like a baseball bat with a batarang tied to the end of it. It's pretty fun. I think that's a neat little idea for a weapon for this. He's just some random fuckhead who decided to make his own superhero costume and go around beating up goons. He only gets the one page. He only has like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, but they do really, really set up the character well. His appearance has him braining some Joker goon with his little bat pick. Actually, you know what? Yeah, his bat pick, because it's got a batarang on the end of it. His little bat pick, and then he starts talking to himself, and in all of his dialogues written in lowercase, and he's kind of mumbling, and he's kind of like saying really weird shit. I think they really set up the character well here. Not entirely clear what they've got planned for the character yet. Obviously, with the name, he's basically just a fuck the Joker, I'm gonna kill all these fucking clowns kind of character. But I like him. I actually like this character. Hopefully they do a little bit more. Again, another character who's probably not going to last super long after this arc. But if they do something with the character, I think it'll be interesting. So we cut back to Harley, who's showing Batman a message that the Joker's been playing on TV, which is essentially just boiling down to, hey Batman, I'm at the Monarch Theater. Come fall into my obvious trap. Batman, because he's still high off his fucking ass, decides that's a brilliant idea and jumps out the window and goes off, despite Harley telling him that is a terrible idea and you should do nothing. But Batman, again, is an insane person, so he's not going to listen to that. So as Batman's kind of running the theater, he starts hearing Alfred talk. He heard him talk to him a little bit at the very end of the last issue, but we get a little bit more here. I really, really like this idea. Batman's just lucid enough to realize that he's going completely nuts, but he's still fucked up just enough to not really question it, but also be like, hey, something's not right here. And I like the idea too, but because he's self-aware of it, weird mind Alfred is kind of super snarky about it, and is even snarkier than Alfred usually is. And that's the thing, is that Alfred is one of those characters Batman's always really needed, because he's that kind of dry, sarcastic wit that you need to like juxtapose the ultra grim seriousness that Batman is with. Personally, I think they're gonna set up the thing that, oh, Alfred's not actually dead, because if I remember correctly, that wasn't Tinian's idea to kill him off, but I don't think they're gonna do it, especially because I don't think Alfred kind of survived that. Maybe? I don't know, but weirder things have happened. Anyways, we get a quick page where Batman beats up some goons, and we get to the theater. Again, somehow the Joker has completely 100% repaired the theater in the 3 days that Batman's been out. I guess he's still high and just hallucinating it, I guess. I'm not really sure. And then he gets into the big screening room, and then we see the Joker up on the big screen where he's doing his Joker rant shit. And the issue ends with Batman being attacked with the corpses of every single person the Joker has ever killed, who are now walking up and moving as zombies. Yes, that is really how the issue ends. This one really wasn't a whole lot better. Again, a little bit of wasted space. I would have appreciated a little bit more Clown Hunter. I think the recaps of kind of what's been going on is better. Definitely needed, something that we didn't have in the previous issue. But the whole zombie thing is just so unbelievably stupid. It just kind of kills the whole issue for me, honestly. But overall, I like the art. The art is really good. I like Jimenez's art. He's pretty good. Again, like I said, he has some issues here and there. The writing, not so much. Again, there's a couple of gripes I had with the line-to-line dialogue is fine. It's just that the overall kind of structure of the issue and the plot is just... it's kind of stupid. He has a couple of good lines here and there, but overall it's just fine. It's not awful, but there's just so much stupid shit that happens, and there's all these kind of like scenes that we kind of didn't need, or lines we didn't need. It just kind of brings it all down to a level that it really probably shouldn't be in. Honestly, if I wasn't already planning to stick through the end of the arc, I probably would have just dropped it here. They did already say that it's going to end relatively soon. I think they're planning on ending it at issue 100 with the main book, not counting like the tie-in shit. So hopefully it kind of picks up from here, but I don't really foresee it. So that's a book that I didn't quite enjoy, so let's move over to a book that I did enjoy. Yes, The Flash, the fastest man alive. I'll admit I don't really talk about it too much, but I really do like The Flash. I think he's one of those characters who's just, he's classic. There's, no matter how many shitty reboots and edgy retcons they try to pull, he's one of those characters that he's always stayed fun and optimistic, and just, he still acts like a fucking superhero, no matter how much they try to make him this grim and edgy character. It's just, I don't think it's possible. And I'll admit, I'm more of a fan of Wally over Barry. I think that's a little bit of personal bias, because obviously, you know, that's who I grew up with. He was in all the cartoons, and he's all in the movies and stuff like that. But I like Barry Allen. I wish he had a little bit more of like a public visage, and just Flash in general, but Barry as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's got the CW show, but I mean, who actually watches that? Let's be honest here. So I've been really enjoying Williamson's run on the comic. He started back with the beginning when the whole Rebirth thing started. I've really enjoyed it. I like how he writes Barry. I think he really gets his personality well. He always presents him as somebody he's always putting on a nice cheery face, optimistic attitude, despite no matter how many grim things are happening, how awful things are just getting for him. And I think that it works. It's a nice way to present the character. I enjoy what he does. And obviously he's clearly a fan, because he's really heavy on the continuity as well. And that's the thing I like, is that the Flash is always one of those characters he's really steeped in his own kind of continuity. He's not somebody who's, even with all the numerous amounts of reboots and retcons and everything that's been going on, he's one of those characters he's always kind of been like the same character. They've never really changed him too much, and even when they do, they still manage to make it work without like completely ignoring his past. I've enjoyed a lot of his villains. I've enjoyed his takes on the classic teams of rogues. Most of his villains, his newer villains, are pretty good. I really liked Godspeed. Most of his villains tend to be one-shot characters. Like Bloodwork was alright. I thought he was kind of weird. I enjoy how he's written his villains, both with the new villains and the old villains. And again, like I mentioned, he's really good with the continuity. He's had a little difficulty trying to cram everything in, both keeping the new 52 continuity, the Rebirth stuff, old continuities. He's had a little bit of trouble trying to juggle all of it. It kind of gets a little too convoluted for its own good. But obviously, that's the issue when you're dealing with a character like the Flash and his decades worth of continuity and Speed Force shenanigans and hyper time and all that stuff. But I like that he's trying. He's not ignoring it. He's actually giving an effort to kind of he's a fan, I guess. It's clearly somebody who's a fan who's not just writing it as sheer fan wank, I guess is the best way to put it. Art-wise on his run, it's been pretty spotty. I can't recall him having the same artist for more than 2 issues in a row. Granted, that's not really his fault, and that's kind of been one of those things with DC since the whole Rebirth thing anyways, so it's really not something I can blame him for, but it's still a little annoying to have an issue that has really nice art, and then suddenly we have 2 or 3 issues and the art is just awful. But overall, I really like The Flash. I really liked Williamson's run. I've enjoyed it. I'm excited to see where he goes from here after this arc. This arc itself has been pretty fun so far. At the moment of recording, there's only 1 issue. Obviously, by the time I get this out, there's probably going to be more, like I had mentioned. So we're just going to do the first issue of the new arc. So, since, as I mentioned, Flash is more focused on its heavy continuity issues, I'm going to give a little heavier of a recap of what's been going on. Obviously, since I've been reading it, I kind of know better, so I can kind of get into it a little bit better. So, Flash was in a battle against a villain called Paradox. He was a walking paradox who was imprisoned in the 25th century before he escaped and came back to the present, wanting to destroy the Flash because of all the fucker he's done to the multiverse over the years via time travel and Speed Force shenanigans and shit like that. So he goes back through time, going to different points in time and killing the Flash at various different points. Because something time paradox is something crisis energy, something whatever. Not important. He kidnaps Godspeed and forces him to work with him. Throws Flash in this weird time void for a little while. It's not really super relevant. Meanwhile, as this is all going on, Iris finds a message from Commander Cold, not Captain Cold. There is a difference. Telling her that the only way that the Flash can defeat Paradox is by enlisting the help of the man who first beat him back in the present and imprisoned him. Who's it turned out to be? Why, it's none other than Professor Zoom. Which especially sucks for Flash, since the last time they fought, Zoom ended up getting killed. Again. Flash escapes from the time void and travels back to the night Zoom killed his mom. Since he knew it'd be the one place in time Thawne would be at, and after some bantering with him, Thawne and Barry decide to make a pact and work together. They go back to the future and get Zoom's silly little lightning wand thing, which ends up not mattering anyways. Zoom reveals that his whole plan to stop Paradox is just straight up murder his ass before it becomes Paradox in the first place. Makes sense. Barry ends up doing that, so they return to the present after fighting for a bit, and then they get slapped around by Paradox for a bit. Then Zoom returns to the past, and after getting nagged by Barry enough, he decides to concede and stops Paradox from existing by not killing him, but by stopping him from ever turning into Paradox in the first place, saving the present and changing history. Only then immediately betray Flash, and Godspeed gets Zoom. Zoom runs off hooting and hollering like Daffy Duck, and he decides to form his own reverse Flash family, his Legion of Zoom. So Zoom goes on a zine trip through time and space, gathering up Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, the original Trickster, the Turtle, the Tornado Twins, which are Barry's kids from the future. They then go on a massive citywide simultaneous crime spree with targets specifically meant to bait Barry and lure him to a trap, where he goes back to his old home, and he finds all the villains waiting there to attack him at once, leaving the Zoom taking control of his body, possessing him, becoming the Flash, leaving Barry's mind trapped in the Speed Force, where he's trapped and attacked by zombified versions of Jesse Quicken, Max, and Mercury.
Everybody got that?
Whew. Alright, well, that's a lot now, isn't there, kid? So the issue itself opens with a quick montage of Thawne as Barry stopping crime and saying how he's way cooler than the real Flash, basically just bragging about how he's going to be the hero that Barry wasn't ever. And I like this idea. I like how Thawne's immediate reaction to taking over the Flash's body is to just become a superhero. It's a nice little throwback. It was kind of his whole motivation in the Silver Age, is that he was obsessed with becoming better than the Flash. He wanted to replace him and become the real hero of the present. So it's a fun little idea. I like that. We don't get a whole lot of it in the issue. I wish there was a little bit more. We really get that 1-page montage, and we get a little bit where he fights some other villains, but it's mostly all part of his evil scheme, which doesn't make any goddamn sense, because I don't even know what the fuck his scheme is yet. So Thawne Flash runs around for a little while stopping crime, and eventually makes his way to meeting up with Impulse, aka Bart Allen, who also came back recently. Thawne Barry decides to go pal around with him for a little while, and we switch over to Barry and the Speed Force, where it turns out that Max and Jesse weren't spooky Speed Force zombies. Yeah. And they begin to plan to get Barry back in control of his real body. We return to Thawne Flash and Bart stopping a robbery by Thawne's villain team, where Thawne goes kind of a little overkill on Trickster, starts beating the shit out of him for no real reason in particular. And then when Bart tries to call him out, he snaps at him, calling him a weak little shit. And he drags Trickster back to their little hideout, where it turns out, don't stop me from being the Flash, guys. Everything's going according to Keikaku. You just guys do whatever the hell you're doing. So they get a little bit of banter there, and he gives him a little new mission to go find some MacGuffins, and he goes to run off and find Iris. Thawne Barry does find them. Unfortunately, Wallace and Avery are also there. Immediately, he fails at convincing them that he's real. And then, of course, a well-timed kick to the jaw from Bart completely seals it. So immediately his cover is blown, so he just decides, fuck it, it'll just kill you all. This is a nice little moment, too, because it's the first moment where Bart and Iris have actually met since Bart came back. Bart's kind of been off doing his own thing. I think he's been with the new Teen Titans, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's a nice little moment where we get Iris remembering all the stuff that she had done with Bart back in like the 90s and the 2000s. It's a nice little bit, and it's nice seeing it again. And again, this is another thing that I really like that Williamson does, is that he pays attention to continuity. He's clearly a fan. He clearly knows what he's writing, and it's fun. Of course, it doesn't really last very long because Thornberry immediately gets back and starts trying to charge him down. But the issue ends with a last-second save by none other than Jay Garrick, the original Golden Age Flash. Overall, it's a pretty solid issue. Again, like I mentioned, the art here is a little spotty. There's some points where they switch artists, where when Barry's in the Speed Force Mind Void thing, they have a completely different artist with a completely different art style. I like the idea of switching it up. I'm not a big fan of the artist of the main issue. Not particularly great. Decent at some points. I like the other artist who does the little interludes in the Speed Force. I like that artist a little bit better. I wish they did the main issue personally. But their art is a little bit rougher. It's not nearly as refined, but so probably wouldn't have worked for a full issue, but I do like it more than the main art. So I don't know. I think it would have been interesting to see the artists swapped. I like, again, as I mentioned, I like Thawne running around pretending to be a hero. I wish we got a little bit more of it. Again, other than the one-page montage, there's 2 or 3 pages where he's fighting the villains, and that's really it. We don't really get a whole lot of that at all, and I wish we got a little bit more of that, but I understand they kind of crammed a lot into this issue, so I appreciate what we did get, but I wish we got a little bit more. There's this little bit where they set up, it seems like, I don't know if the villains in general or just the Trickster is planning on betraying Zoom. I like that. I like that they're setting that up without really like acknowledging it. We get like a 1-panel thing where Trickster makes a face after he gets his ass kicked. So I'm interested to see what they're doing with that. And of course, also, I really, really loved finally, again, getting to see both Jay and Bart back doing stuff. They have been around for a little while. Jay's been around since, like, right around when Doomsday Clock was starting to come out is when Jay came back. Bart's been back for a little bit less. But neither of them have really been doing anything. They've been kind of off on their own books. Mostly just, like, big event-type things. They haven't really been solidly back and doing anything yet. Again, I haven't really been reading, like, I know Bart's been kind of palling around with the Teen Titans, so I haven't really been reading that, so he's kind of been around doing that, but it's nice to see him here again with the Flash family doing just stuff in general again, and just seeing Jay back as well. And then the stuff with Jesse Quick and Max in the Speed Force with Barry. Again, that was relatively brief. We only got about 2 or 3 pages worth of that. But I like that. Again, it's nice seeing them back again. It's a nice little explanation, again, bringing them back, establishing that Speed Force bullshit rules all, especially time paradoxes. I liked what they did where they have them show up as zombies, and it turns out that they're not actually zombies, it's just Barry being a wangsting asshole again, and it turns out that he's just imagining them to look like that. It's a little silly. Thankfully, it's only 1 page. If it had went on a little bit longer than that, I would have been annoyed as hell. I'm glad that it turned out to just be like a bait and switch. Because if it was just, oh, they're dicking around in the Speed Force as creepy made-up zombies now, I think that would be worse overall. But Williamson, he's not the kind of guy who seems like he would have done that. Somebody else probably would have, but he doesn't seem like the type to do it. Definitely very, very solid. Another really good work from Williamson. I'm excited to see what goes on with the story arc. Things really seem to be ramping up. I'm really interested to see what they do. So I'm definitely going to be sticking on. Definitely going to keep reading this. So yes, I would solidly recommend. Again, very bad point to kind of jump on right here and now, especially where there's all this backstory to the arcs and all this other super unimportant shit that's been going on too. But again, I think this is a little bit better where I think there's actually effort in kind of recapping what's been going on. I would start at the very least with the beginning of the last arc, Legion of Zoom, not this arc, but that one's relatively short. I think it was only like 2 or 3 issues, so you're not really catching up on too much. So that's kind of it majorly for the monthly releases that I've been, or the, I guess, bi-weekly technically, the current releases that I've been reading. Granted, right now with the main books kind of being like I said, a bi-weekly release, I'm probably not going to do like everything that I read. So, obviously, since just doing basic reviews of stuff is going to get boring, also, you know, with the way I do things, I'm probably going to be behind the time I get editing these episodes up. So, the other half of videos I was going to do just kind of random reviews. Most likely just either pick a book or a storyline that I've read before, or how I was going to do it is I was going to pick a book, just literally any kind of comic, just randomly pull something out of a bargain bin, see something random at a comic reader. You know, occasionally I'll be like scrolling through some comic book reader app, or, you know, just online on some website, or, you know, again, looking through like a bargain bin at like a comic book store, something like that, and I'll see something that looks interesting, and, you know, I'm like, oh, maybe, you know, it's cheap, I'll check this out, or, you know, oh, you know, I can waste like 10 minutes to read this, so, you know, there's a lot of books like that, where I've kind of thrown into the backlog, kind of stuff that I wanted to read that looks good, but I haven't really had an excuse to actually read, you know. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to select a book kind of from like a backlog, read it. If it's like a shorter series, I'll read one issue, go from there. If it's a longer series, I'll either do it in chunks or just do a review of a full story. So, first try we're doing this, I am going to do Psychoblast. I had absolutely no goddamn clue what the hell this story was about going into it. I knew nothing about who worked on it, not a single goddamn thing. I just saw this cover, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read this. So, what even is this series about? That is a good question. I don't really know. Nothing really happens in this first issue that, in fact, nothing fucking happens at all in this first issue that would at all really set up what the hell this story is about. The issue is primarily about this woman named Taryn, with a Y, St. Jude. It was the 80s, just get over it. Who's like she's a reporter, or she's like a detective, or it's not entirely clear what the hell she is, but she's looking for some guy named Brian Burke. Why is she looking for him? Not a clue. She was hired from some Castro-looking guy who's working for some mystery lady who want to capture him and kill him. Couldn't tell you why they want to, just by seeing how this guy acts, because he's boring as hell and doesn't do anything. What is this series about? Well, thankfully, they were smart enough to put a full summary of the premise at the very beginning of the first issue, which I don't know if it was just done because it seemed cool, or if it was done because they had no idea what they were doing. So the reason they're hunting Burke is because he's what they call a Psychoblast, which they don't explain what the hell that is, but basically it's somebody with psychic powers. He's basically invincible, and he's crazily super duper strong psychic powers. But for whatever reason, he can only use them when he's asleep. He can't actively use the powers. He doesn't even seem to be aware that he has any powers. I like this idea as a concept that can work. The idea that somebody's like this super duper ultra powerful psychic, you know, crazy super duper unstoppable hero, but they don't even know it and they can't even actively use it. I like that idea as a concept, but it doesn't really get used particularly well here. I think, again, they spend a little too long trying to actually set anything up, but most of the issue is basically just filler. And in fact, he doesn't even use his powers until like the second to last page, and it's so disappointing. And it's so, honestly, if I had picked this up off the shelf, knowing nothing about it, you know, kind of like I did without having the ability to research or know that, oh, there's only like a handful of issues, I wouldn't have bothered buying this. I probably would have skimmed through it like, yeah, this sucks, and then dropped it from here. Thankfully, with the power of hindsight, I already know that it's like 9 issues, so I'm probably still going to read the rest of it. So, yeah, issue 1 kind of fails its job of hooking you on the cast, the characters, the setting, and the premise. In fact, if it weren't for the plot synopsis, I would have absolutely no fucking clue what was going on or what even the story was. So, thank God they put that in, but otherwise it's just a waste. Again, nothing really happens. We get Taryn goes to meet Burke, finds him at a church where he's like a janitor, follows him to the bar. She calls Castro guy and decides that, oh, this boring fuck who's a janitor, oh, this is definitely the guy we're looking for. Then she follows him to his house as he's banging some random slut he picked up from the bar, breaks in, finds like a newspaper clipping of some like story about like a plane crash. That's kind of like an ongoing thing, I'll get to that. As she's running away, she gets psychoblasted, But then nothing really comes from that, so they decide to hop into a Jeep, drive off into the desert, where Castro and his goons were hunting them, and then they get shot at, blown up, and then that's finally when Burke goes Psychoblast. And all of that is about 35 pages worth of content. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, there's this ongoing kind of flashback where we see Taryn kind of getting these flashbacks to like a plane crash. Which we see as a giant like psychic hand crushing, which is the same thing that she gets attacked by. It's weird because it's not her in the flashback, and she knows this. The newspaper clipping that I mentioned shows that it was Brian's family who was in the plane crash, and that he was kind of the only survivor of it. He wasn't actually on the plane, they don't say, but it's an interesting idea. I'm expecting them to set up, it's like, oh, he's his daughter, or like wife or sister or whatever who survived the crash. But I don't think that's what they're going to go for. That seems to be the most obvious answer, but of course, because he's psychic, it could be anything. But overall, I think the idea is, it's a nice little, like, story idea. But yeah, overall, there's really nothing to this issue. If I paid money for this, I probably would have been disappointed. Thankfully, I did not actually buy this. Although, you know what, if I saw it at a store, maybe I would just for the novelty of it if it was cheap. I don't know. Probably not. But as I mentioned, thankfully it's short enough. It's about 8 or 9 issues, so I'll probably go through the rest of it anyways, just see how it ends up. Maybe it's worth talking about. Maybe something happens. Maybe not. Obviously, if I talk about it again, well, you know that I've decided to read the rest of the series. So, before I sat down to write this, I decided to do a little bit of looking, kind of find out what exactly was the idea behind this, who wrote this, whatever. And I checked the credits on the book, and I was kind of shocked to find out that the writer was Stephen Grant. Now, Grant's not like a super prolific writer. He's not somebody that if I mention his name to some random person on the side of the street, you probably wouldn't know. But he's been doing a lot of stuff since like the 80s. Been doing a lot of work for both Marvel, DC. He's done a whole lot of independent stuff. I think most famously, he's worked on The Punisher. He did the original Punisher series back in the 80s. The rather short-lived miniseries The Punisher had back in the 80s before he got his main series. He's also had a couple of other big independent books. I think the most major one that I found was a book called Two Guns. I haven't read it, but I've heard people talk about it before. I know that there's a really shitty Marky Mark movie made about it, which I never saw. But I would say that's probably his like biggest in terms of mainstream success work. Although obviously you wouldn't really know that he worked on it just by watching the movie. Personally, the thing that I liked the most that he's done was, granted this isn't really his work, but he did the RoboCop comic that was based on Frank Miller's infamously insane screenplay for the movie. I like his writing. I've seen him before. Again, he's not somebody who's just, oh, you have to go out of your way to read his stuff. You know, he's not one of those kinds of big writers, but I really liked his stuff. And it's weird reading this and just seeing it being so just dull and nothing happening. And it's not that it's like bad. It's not great. It's just nothing fucking happens. And that's the worst part too, is that if shit actually happened in this, I'd probably like this a little bit more. On the other hand, the pencil art was somebody named Rob Phipps. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong. He's done basically nothing that I could find. He's done like a cover here and there for Marvel, and that's about it. Honestly, his art's pretty bad. It's a little sloppy at points. Honestly, just overall, it's super generic. It's just like, oh, I've read an 80s comic. Oh, this just kind of looks like it. Nothing about it stands out when it's at its good points, and it's a little sloppy at a lot of points. He doesn't really get like anatomy particularly well at sometimes. It's a little funky looking. I don't want to just say like generic, but it could be better. I wish the art was a little bit better. If it had better art, I think at the very least the visuals would carry it, because there's a lot of little like trippy effects that they try to do at points, but again, nothing really happens in this first issue enough to be like, okay, I would have spent money on this. But hopefully the rest of the issues change my opinion. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it for our first episode here. Obviously, these might be a little bit longer. I don't want these to be like podcast length episodes. So this is kind of the ideal length that I'm shooting for. Maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer. I might trim some recap segments here and there. But overall, that's it. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, any comments, obviously leave them. I'll include a link to our Discord server below. As always, you can find me there. I'm usually pretty active, so if you have a question for me, you can either leave it in the comments or shoot it to me there. If you have a recommendation for something for me to check out, have something you want me to do, like a specific little set piece on, just let me know. I'm happy to accept pretty much any recommendation, any kind of suggestion. As I mentioned, I'm looking for stuff to kind of pick up more, so otherwise, yep, just let me know how you like this, and thank you very much for watching. Make sure to, do the YouTuber things that they always bug you to do. I always never like doing, because that's gay. But hopefully if you enjoyed, I'll see you next time. Thank you.